great minds think alike, right? Great minds think alike, but fools seldom differ.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a second part to that rhyme, or whatever you want to call it. And it's true, right? Like it's like if we all just sit around and agree, we're never going to grow.
Yep.
And that's like, isn't that what you're trying to do with your company? Is grow your company?
Welcome to another edition of Brews and BizDev. This week, our illustrious guest is coming from inside the house, and that's Matt Zelasko, also of Renown Creative. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Paul. I can hear you through this wall, right?
Yeah, likewise. That's kind of awkward.
Yeah, we probably should have just done this out in the office together, but
yes, distanced, but yes, together. But here we are. So hopefully that sound's not bleeding through and making for a terrible listening experience for our billions of listeners.
Yeah, well, we'll have to ask Shelby to work on that. On the audio.
Yeah, fix it in post. So do you want to fill in our listeners? Give your own little your little elevator pitch.
Yeah, sure. So I am the marketing and innovation leader here at Renown Creative. I've been here for a couple of years now, and the long and short of it is I deal directly with our clients, helping Paul create marketing strategies, sales activation strategies, and customer success strategies. And then the innovation portion of it, while that does seem a little buzzworthy, really it's just a matter of taking a company or a brand and finding positive change at its core, right? Opportunities for that. Now, that's not necessarily going to be every single company that we deal with or every single brand, but really it is something that we're always looking towards so that we can find new and innovative ideas for them.
Cool. Well, welcome to our esteemed show, and I apologize to our viewers because, as anyone who's ever seen any other episode can see, I'm in a different spot than I used to be, and we've got a breakdown over here, and so I've got I'm a little sidelit here, but that's okay.
Paul, I'm gonna tell you something. No one cares.
Cool. That's where I default to, but then I try to pay attention to what people might be perceiving. But anyway, let's get to the important stuff, and that is the question: what beer are you featuring and drinking today, Matt?
Well, today I have the 11-Day Power Pils. It is from Thin Man Brewery, and I wish I had a great reason behind it. It was on sale.
Mm-hmm.
That's, a good reason to do anything, to buy anything, I suppose.
Yeah.
But no, it is a nice beer. I believe that it supports the same charity that the 11-Day Power Play supports.
Yep.
It was nice of me to buy it on sale, right? For the charity. But how about you?
Yeah, well, what I got going on here is the Singlecut Shoegazer. That's the whole thing. Triple dry hop IPA. And I've never had this before, so this is going to be a first. And in fact, we picked this up from Patty's Beer, and the guy on the way out said, like, when you come back, let me know how that is, because he hasn't tried it either. And so, yeah, this will be a first. But being a sucker for marketing, right, and packaging, it's got these chucks on it. And so I'm a fan of chucks. And it is brewed with Pineapple Express terpene. So if you put Chucks and Pineapple Express in the same sentence for me, I'm probably going to buy your product and at least try it. So here it is. Let's crack into it, if you will. Cheers. Oh. Don't get on the computer.
Yep. Dan will be happy about that.
Wow.
It's good.
It is good. The Pineapple Express actually really comes through.
Really?
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's a Pilsner.
It is. Nice. Excellent. So our theme of the day here is takeaways from inbound, right? We just came, was it last week? Seems like a while ago now, but I think it was just last week, the week before, that inbound 2020 happened. Of course, the virtual version, as everything has turned to a virtual version. So, the game plan here today is to just hit some of our big takeaways, whether that's from the content itself, the experience of the event, and let's just kind of hit into it. So number one on the list for you, like, what's the biggest overall, like, here's what I came away with heaviest?
Yeah. So this one was pretty easy because, everything's virtual now. And hopefully we can go back to in-person events pretty soon. But I think it's going to be, honestly, virtual for the foreseeable future. And why not beyond, right? So, or at least hybrid once things can go back to normal. I think that's one of the main things that we're going to see from this is places that, event promoters that do it well are probably going to see, hey, we can do, the in-person, like HubSpot at Boston, in Boston every single year, but then, do also a video conference version,
Mm-hmm.
My biggest takeaway, honestly, from this was that HubSpot has, I believe, set the bar for these virtual conferences, webinars, things like that, because the platform was incredible. I don't know if they built it from the ground up or what, but I think right now would be a great place for in post for us to, put in, a screenshot of it or even, but it was great. It was easy to use. It was just, it felt interactive to me, right? Rather than just flat on the screen, here's some links, here's where you're going to click in to get to, this breakout session. Here's where you're going to click out to get in, or click into to get into that breakout session.
Mm-hmm.
This felt a little bit more like I was somewhere, right? And that's honestly a feeling that that has been missing, I think, from the internet for 20 years or so. Like I know that we're, people call it Web 2.0 and mobile optimized and all of these things, but if you really remember way back in the day, early internet, there was a term interactive, right? And there were all kinds of companies that named themselves interactive studios and things like that. And that got kind of like lost, I think, because it looked kind of amateurish because anybody, like a lot of people were doing it and it looked kind of old and because the graphics weren't quite there. But I think we're at a point where we can really start looking at that again. And I think HubSpot did a really, really great job of that. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that overall, it was a great, and like we've talked about before, it's not like we are at all of these things, right? We are now firmly in conference season. So anyone who decided to still have theirs in virtual format, they're happening like every single week at this point. And having been through, and I'm not going to mention names of the ones that I've experienced because, and it's not meant to be a call out because we're working with what we're working with, right? So people are new to this, so I get it. And so there's been some things that like content was great and the experience was okay, right? And maybe it's just like one single track. And I know we both had an experience where the timings weren't what they were actually scheduled in advance, so we'd miss things that we wanted to go to. Those kind of errors, again, shit happens. The best intentions can go awry. But yeah, HubSpot had that, the graphics that kind of moved, right, as if you were like looking at the campus and building in that there's Q&A built into everything, right? Like every single session, if it wasn't an AMA, had Q&A for the second half of the hour, which I thought was great. And for me, I know that my experience, and I think we both have this in common, is just like events are themselves when they run for multiple days, the whole like staring at the screen and interact, just like soaking up is tiring. It's tiring for the brain. You know, we've all been Zooming along enough in a pandemic to have seen the information about it actually requires more concentration and eats more energy to be in a Zoom meeting for an hour than it is to be in a room with people.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that still held up to where, for me, even though HubSpot did a great version of it, it's difficult to do 30-minute presentations with no interaction and just watch someone talk and present and then go over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. I think there were some obvious benefits of doing it. You know, me sitting in my office in a comfortable chair that I'm used to, rather than being in you know, the gigantic conference center in Boston, you know, and in, you know, like a hard, not very comfortable chair, squeezed in with, you know, 1,000 other people or 500 other people. And that might just be my own sort of, you know, comfortability level. But then I feel like I squeezed in more breakouts than I would possibly have been able to if I had to physically walk across that 3-mile event center, right? So yeah, I mean, there's definitely pros and cons. I think either way, after the 2 days, I was pretty burnt out on it, especially since, you know, when you're at the conference itself, when you're at Inbound itself, you're pretty much, you know, I mean, you're sending that email to all your clients, you're sending that email to all your colleagues saying like, hey, I'm going to be gone for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
I can do that for this because for whatever reason, I felt like I'm still here so I can still work. And I, you know, and there was some distraction there. Where you miss something. The nice thing is that it's also now available on demand, right? So it's all, I mean, most of it's there. I've been catching up on some things that maybe I missed because of, you know, timing, or I felt like I maybe didn't pay as much attention because, you know, I was on my email or I had to take a call or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think the on-demand afterwards is a great feature that obviously is not a thing at a live event for the most part. I mean, whether it's Inbound or whether any of them, right? Like no one's like, hey, here's videos. And if you weren't, you know, if you missed something, here's all the content you missed, because everyone's always trying to build that exclusivity, right? I mean, if we're going to give it to them, why would they come? So like having that available afterwards makes sense. And, you know, for me, since, you know, and we'll kind of wrap up the event experience itself, but I think it's a worthwhile topic because it's a thing right now, and grappling with things better. And for me, I took away, I mean, I did watch a couple of the sessions. One of the sessions was about presentations and I had some good info in it, but having gone through the experience of those kinds of presentations meant, so when you and I delivered, you know, earlier this week, we delivered a webinar and like I changed it based on the experience of having had sit through that. And of course we didn't deliver a webinar for 2 days. But, you know, for me, the takeaway is like building in interactivity of some kind, like some kind of, whether it's polls or Q&A, or even just questions you don't even get the response to, but like people have to stop and think and engage, is really critical, because I don't think it goes more than 10, 15 minutes before people are going to check out, no matter how much you're dancing and how exciting you are and super charismatic.
Sure. Paul, I've got, speaking of distractions, I've got this river of beer from my initial. Oh. So I'm gonna go grab.
You should clean that up.
I'm gonna take care of that really quick. I will be right back.
Yeah. And while Matt's cleaning up, here's a word from our sponsor. Welcome to Renown Creative, our sponsor.
All right.
This is really intriguing.
Speaking, all right, yeah, this is great television.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, I think it is something that a lot of people are struggling with. You know, maybe it's not necessarily, you know, businesses that put them on regularly, but they're struggling with missing, you know, those trade shows, those home shows, those different things that are going to be fewer and further between. So I think it's good seeing some leaders like HubSpot, and I'm sure there's plenty of others that I'm not just tuned into that are doing it just as well.
Yeah.
It's good seeing companies like that kind of take that step, right?
Yeah.
And again, I mean, just opening it up. So just because, you know, let's say in 2021, they can do, you can do your in-person event again, because let's say we have a vaccine and everything's fine.
Yep.
That's still, you know, that's a limiting thing, right? Traveling to Boston or Las Vegas for for, I believe Marketo's is out there.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that costs money, right? You know, it's time, it's resources, right? Having that available to everybody, it's like, wow, this is almost a no-brainer. They should have been, you know, it's like we should have been doing this all along, right? So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that it survives as an add-on functionality in most cases, and I think it will, because largely these are very intelligent people running these things.
I will tell you, if I don't like predictions, but if I had to make one, I think at the very least, inbound will be hybrid, and I think a lot of others will be in 2021, at least. Probably going forward.
Yeah, and there's, I'm sure there's far more that left to be discovered about how to make things engaging, right? How to, and not just like coming up with tech, but just thinking through, which I know is something that we've talked a lot with, I mean, some prospects, clients, because we're working on a number of projects with clients of adapting models to be more virtual than they were before. And the key is, right, like replicate the benefits, not the features.
Right.
Trying to like make it a version, an online version of what you were doing, and then just think from the bottom up, what do we want people coming away with? And then what do we have to build to deliver that, versus like making it like last year, which is, you know, I know easier said than done, because people get attached to things and, you know, systems that they've set up before. But I think that's a big key with just, think about what you want the value to be and engineer that with your tech, instead of trying to make it just like what you used to do, except people are staring at a screen. And I assume other people are working on more things. I'm sure as this season carries on, we'll see different kinds of things. I know we did chat about one that's coming up here soon that has got a very high ticket price. And honestly, having been through, like, I literally can't imagine, having been through a few of these already, what could be happening on my computer for me to spend $800 when like inbound was what, 80 or whatever it was, right? I mean, it's like, what could possibly be going on that's like 10, 20 times the value of what we just got? I can't imagine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Apple's sponsoring it, and they're sending you a MacBook, right?
Yeah. Seriously, like the swag I'm getting in the mail better be serious. It better like, have I bought into a timeshare? What is even happening here? But yeah, so there's the event itself, there's people dealing with that side of it, and then of course there's the content, right? There's what we actually watched, what we actually took in, what we take away as far as things we can actually implement. So for you, what were some of the things that jump out in your mind as far as actual practical solid takeaways?
The main thing that jumps out for me, is it practical? I don't know, but I'll let you be the judge of that. You like to do that anyways.
I have to.
I noticed, not necessarily, if you go back and look at all the titles of all the breakouts, that won't really jump out, but I noticed a lot of people just in their breakout sessions, in their decks, shifting a focus to more of like a brand marketing, more of, kind of like the long-term plays, right? Rather than these, like constantly, chasing leads and, lead generation, these sales activation, techniques, things like that. I literally saw a graph that that we use a lot, from Les Benet and Peter Field, from their amazing book, The Long and Short of It, which, these are guys that come from, kind of the more traditional advertising world, right? Like the world that places like HubSpot and people who, and I'm not going to say HubSpot ever said this, but people who used HubSpot and got into digital, kind of early on were saying, yeah, we're going to take them down. TV is going to be dead and print is going to be dead and all of these things are going to be dead. I'm seeing digital marketing and digital marketers mature, like before our eyes, like realize. And the reason behind it is, one, I think, especially in this context, you're seeing a lot of a lot of these people are seeing HubSpot actually do brand marketing and actually succeed with it. But then even beyond that, I'm sure in all of their spaces, they're running into the big players that they were, supposedly going to take down, kill with their digital and all of that, their direct to consumer and everything like that. It's long been kind of unpopular opinion that I've held that there is a place for TV ads and brilliant TV ads, not just your typical whatever, and even radio ads and print ads if there's a publication that people read cover to cover that are in your audience, that's a great place to do it. Is it expensive? Of course it is. But guess what else is getting expensive? Attention on digital, right? It didn't used to be because it was new and the big brands weren't doing it. Well, guess what? The big brands are doing it, and the social media channels are are big brands now. So they're charging for it, right? Like, I mean, there was a time where you could build a massive audience on Facebook, and you could build a brand there. I wouldn't possibly use just Facebook to build a brand, or just Twitter, or just Instagram, or just LinkedIn or TikTok, or anything like that. And I don't think anybody really did just that, but they fell into it, right? They were like, oh my God, like all of a sudden, their page had 10,000 followers and they could sell everything. And, but as every year, the amount of people that saw your posts were less and less and less. And then your spend went up and up and up. And it's like, well, but it's nice to see people kind of coming around and maturing, right? Into more of, all of the lessons that, the ad agencies learned for us, right? Like there was this newness of digital that made us feel like we don't have to listen to all of that, but like he went through so much of it, think about just, I know it's one of your favorite TV shows, one of mine, Mad Men. Think about that. Like when TV was new, right? Yeah. Like advertising on TV was like this, like, wow, okay, there were some people who thought it wasn't going to be great. There were other people who thought it was going to be the future. Both of them were kind of right? So why would this be any different? Kind of it always seems a little silly to me, Mm-hmm. You know me, I hate calling anything digital marketing because it's all just marketing at this point. We don't sign online, like we used to, right? You don't say, oh, I'm going online.
Yeah.
You just are online, right? Life is online.
It's coming at you, right? Notifications, things are on there. The internet is taking you on. Yeah.
My notebook is connected to the internet. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just this, it's melded together. So,
yeah.
And I was really seeing, and I had some really neat conversations with people. And that was one thing that I sort of challenged myself to do was, yes, be in these breakout sessions, but start conversations in the chats and then take them out of the chat, or at least try to. And I had a couple of really great conversations with some people. We traded some resources and some ideas and things like that. And one thing that just really sticks out in my mind is that a lot of people are looking at brand marketing rather than just, and I'm not saying getting rid of the, the sales activation, the lead generation, all of that stuff, but it's like, okay.
AdWords is dead.
Now we need to, right. Yeah. Won't that be funny when people start saying that all of the things that they were saying were going to kill something
are now dead? Yeah.
There will be people who say that, and I'm sure there's people already saying it, but
there are. Yeah.
Let's keep a level head here,
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no, that's there was a more brand and again, right, and of course, like, and you just said it, I mean, digital, like everything is online now, and it's like, it's a channel, right? The basics, what people I think are remembering is, those basics of how you have a message that connects with a human and has them do something differently are still the same, but it's now you have to know how to get in front of them, and in front of them is, and all around them and in their pocket, versus like, hey, you're going to have 60 minutes and you're going to have 3-minute chunks to, throw in your ads, which of course, even in TV, I mean, companies ran that when they started. The shows that people were watching were giant commercials where they're just getting shit sold to them insanely until the quiz show, right? Until the quiz show debacle and the giant scam that it was had them change the rules so that ads then became this off in between content things, whereas before that was the content. The only reason there was TV shows was because they were selling Howdy Doody, the selling kids merch, and that's it.
And that, but I mean, that didn't ever really go away. I mean,
No.
You know, speaking of shows, one of my favorites, 30 Rock, you know, the vertical integration bit that they did where, and of course they made it goofy, but I mean, think about some of the movies that, you know, when we were younger, right? What was the one with the Power Glove, the Nintendo glove? The kid from was it the kid from the Wonder Years? Was Fred Savage? Was it, whatever? I can't remember that. I can't remember what it is. Maybe we'll edit it and put it down here somewhere.
Exactly. Well, we're going to have so much editing in this episode.
I know. Creating more work for other people.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, it like that still exists.
The placement still exists.
Product placement and just content marketing, right? Like, I mean, that, like, we talk about inbound marketing like it's new, or like it was new and whatever. But I mean, I have really neat, not to go off on another tangent here, but I have a really neat set of booklets that a golf shop down here on Main Street 100 years ago used to put out. It was, you know, how to improve your swing and how to, you know, improve your whatever. I'm not a golfer. I don't really remember what they say, but and it was basically an advertisement. You know, like it was just a thing that this store very brilliantly produced and gave out in a lot of different places, and it was their own form of media, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it said, "Hey, come stop by for some new clubs," right? Or for, you know, a free session to help you improve your swing, things like that. It's been going on forever. And you know, this has nothing to do with HubSpot, but I think one of the biggest mistakes we can ever make is not, you know, learning from the people who have done it before us.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, the thought that it's something new is usually you usually want to check yourself, because again, the delivery might be new, right? How you reach might be new, right. But and I saw someone, I was watching some documentary just before Inbound. It was a content marketing documentary by the Content Marketing Institute. Yeah. And so, and you know, one of the guys very early on in it says, you know, it's a term that we use, so it gives us something to get onto, but it's all been content marketing forever, right? Those old ads are content. Like, what do you think that is? Like, that's now that there's a channel for the delivery, and we're emphasizing not pitching hard in it, right? So there's different points of emphasis, but it's all the same stuff. And if you know those basics and you can create stories that engage people and have them think of you and think of themselves and do something differently, then you're game. But coming back to Inbound, so we just reel this back in. Woo! So are there any particular? I know you and I have talked about some of the LinkedIn ads, right? AJ's thing. So
yeah, I didn't want to
some practical takeaways.
I didn't want to steal it all from you, but if you want me to, widening your targeting, I think, is something that is I'm seeing more and more of, and I'm personally seeing success with. So it was really nice to have that validation that other people are doing it and seeing success, because, you know, when you're doing digital ads, you think it's successful, but there's always that thing in the back of your head. You're like, but could it be better, right?
Exactly.
Could this be better? Can I optimize it more? Mm-hmm. So it's nice to see these really brilliant people that either work for HubSpot or work, you know, at agencies that have had a ton of success. You know, sort of say some of the similar things that I've been thinking and feeling and seeing. Yeah. But yeah, widening rather than micro-targeting, rather than getting super specific, you know, widening that a little bit. And obviously it depends on, you know, who you're trying to attract. But do you want to bring up your stat, because I don't remember what it was?
Yeah, yeah. So, and it wasn't even in the same presentation, right? So, like one of the LinkedIn ads was what AJ Wilcox. So that was his piece, and there was in that the like don't micro target, don't get too carried away with it. And in one of the first one I saw, and you mentioned it earlier, it was B2B Insights session with Ty Heath and someone else. I forget the other person, but and they had that activation, sales activation versus brand thing. So of course, speaking of validation, right? They had that piece, and then part of that message, just like that relates to the don't micro target too much, is a stat that 40% of people will change jobs in the next 4 years, and that's not even count. That's just kind of our new normal. That's not even taking into account that we're in a particularly tumultuous time. So that number is probably going to be higher. But even in the regular normal post-COVID, you're going to be almost half of people are going to have different positions in the next 4 years. So the thing where you're not, especially from a brand perspective, right? It's one thing for lead gen. It's one thing if you're trying to get them to click through and you're going to, beat them to death with a cadence as soon as they download your ebook or whatever that is. But if you're doing, brand ads and you're pushing content to them to get them to start engaging, widen that thing, because that person could be the VP next year, right? Or they'll be at some other company that actually has more of a need or whatever it is. Yeah. So yeah, I love that stat. I was like, oh, to think that almost half of people will be somewhere else in the next 4 years, you start to realize, oh, we should don't make your bets based on this person's going to be in this position and they're not worth it. They could be very quickly.
Sure. Exactly.
So yeah, so that was definitely a good presentation. One of the things I'll throw in, there's a great presentation by Rahul Raj, go-to-market strategies for startups. And it was almost right at the end. It was one of the last few on the second day. I made sure to see it because, we just helped a startup launch, right? So I figured it's going to be useful. And not only does Rahul really present himself well and in a fun and engaging way, but great what seems like that basic information, but I feel like one of our jobs is to always remind people of what the fundamentals are. Right. Sure. So not lose sight of oh, do you have a core proposition? Right. I'm obsessed, this by now, for me, job one is messaging hierarchy. Do we know what the hell we're supposed to be talking about in a relevant way? Because who cares what we're floating out? If we're going to use whatever the channel is, the message has to work. And he had some great ideas for he had a couple exercises where you could create your brand positioning statement, the normal one, right? This person from this person, fill in the blanks, but then also we're the blank of blank, for startups particularly, we're the Tesla of finance, or we're the Uber of whatever that segment is. And I was like, okay, if I'm creating a plan, I can see that being useful ways of at least a thought experiment. I wouldn't float that out a whole lot because that's
okay. I'm getting worried there. I was like,
yeah, no, I mean that's not the tagline, right? And it's not, but it might be in a pitch, because in the world where if you're doing something new and you're talking to someone in an actual interaction, here, how can I get you to understand this in 5 seconds, or the this of that? Does that sound interesting? Now we lead into it, and it is so overplayed at this point, but most people wouldn't think about it that way. Most people wouldn't think well, what even is that for us if we have one? And again, our client actually had a line in copy as we were rolling out something where there was with the electric car, we've stripped it down, we've changed the basics, we haven't reinvented it, right? It's still a car, but it's more efficient and more sustainable. And I'm like, okay. And I fucking changed the copy to I removed electric car and I just put Tesla, because that's actually, I feel a more compelling. The electric car for me reminds me of that it got killed. The only electric car that has a positive association still is Tesla. So it's no, did you see that documentary? That's a rough thing. So I think for, again, if you are in the position of you're about to roll something out, it was a decent thought experiment to do. And the rest of it was very basic, know your position. And then, set up your ads, set up all the rest of your shit. But you got to know where you're coming from and who you're talking to and about what. Otherwise, you're just going to be more noise. And I think in the world of content, the noise amount is insane. bad copy, bad everything everywhere. So even if you have to use a cheap trick like that, I think it's worthwhile. So what about you? What's any other pragmatic, like key kind of like, I remember this one point, and is there anything that you've been able to implement? Because I mentioned earlier, right, that I actually took the lesson of my own tired feeling at the end and said, we've got to build in more interaction to our presentation. Is there anything that you've thought like, even if it was not learning, but reminding, right? Because that's a lot of the value of these things is you remind yourself of certain things. Is there anything that you got reminded of that it's a valuable point?
Put me on the spot here, Paul.
Yeah, we'll edit this long pause afterwards.
No, we shouldn't.
Yeah, I know.
Just let everybody know that it takes me a while to think of things. That's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing that I've been able to put into practice yet. Some nice, and I'm not going to remember the woman's name, but she had a copywriting. It was like I think it was like 6 tips of different things that you can just take and do. A couple of them were, obviously things that as a copywriter, I've known and I love. As a reminder, sort of like just to kind of bring it back to let's think about the title, right? And spend the time on the title. Because so if you're gonna spend 3 hours crafting a piece of content, a blog post, let's say, spend 20% of that time writing the title. Because if you don't spend that time creating a really great title and a really great even a really great first sentence, you're not going to get people to read the rest, right?
Yeah.
And too often, I will spend a lot of time writing something, or maybe not that much time writing something, and then like, oh shit, I gotta throw a title on this thing. What is it going to be? And it's, and you get these conventions in your head, and you know what has worked before, so you go back to the well, but really, like making sure that you're not just doing the same old thing. For me was like a really great reminder. In the 3 days since, or 5 days inbound, I haven't written anything, so I haven't had to do it. But it really was, just a matter of writing for that human and making sure that they read it and consume it. As both a copywriter and SEO person, sometimes I get too far to the emotional human side, and then too far to the technical, Google crawler side. So yeah, I mean, that was a nice reminder. Anything else? Nothing kind of jumps out at me.
Okay.
I have yet to watch Scott Brinker's. I believe he had an AMA on MarTech Stacks. I am very interested in that because every time Scott Brinker, he's their VP of ecosystem. But even long before that, I followed him for years. He's the chief MarTech. He's just that's what his alias is. Really interesting guy. I always come away with some new tool that is like really neat. And now it's even better because it integrates directly with HubSpot, because obviously he's like, to me, it seems like his job is like, go out and find cool things to integrate with HubSpot. It's like a kid in a candy store. For me, it's like cool tools. And bring them in. So I'm excited about that. I have that one set aside to
Nice. Cool. Well, I think a couple, for me, there is one, I mean, I actually used, and I'll give the shout out since I've done it a couple times already, that Ty Heath, they had some LinkedIn, or maybe it was the next day, there's some LinkedIn kind of social stats for B2B social, right? And talking about, and I don't remember the stats offhand, but it was like a nice display where they had these 3 numbers where it's like, here's the people online, here's the percentage of executives and people in management who say they're definitely going to look at a business, right, on LinkedIn. Like they're not going to not check you out, which for some of us, again, this is not exactly like, holy shit, really? Like people are going to like check you out in advance on the internet. But for some businesses, right, if they're not putting the presence, they're not investing in whatever it takes to actually like look good and come across there, you're missing something. And so there's a prospect for us. I actually screenshotted like what that display was and then did a little bit of a audit. Like I did some screen shooting of like the LinkedIn, like the salesperson, what the profile was. I mean, I found someone who had a profile and their last job was still being featured. It was in their featured section, was an ad for like the last job. And now they're working at the new person, like the competitor. So, I could use the stats to be like, listen, we're not just making this up, right? Like here's data. People are looking and they're looking here for B2B. And if you're going to be in the B2B, you need this page to be a little better and a little more useful for people. And your lead seller should probably not be advertising the competition, which if you're not looking for, you're not going to see, right? If you're not checking out your people's LinkedIns, if you don't have a protocol for that, if you don't have kind of a standing operating procedure and here's our guidelines, then, you can lose some action. And that's not a good, like someone looks and checks out your person that's selling them something and they're selling the competition, bad look. So I literally put that into effect and share the information so that they could actually take care of the situation. I don't think it gets any more pragmatic than that. Yeah. And the other piece, I just want to acknowledge, these times we're in these days, that the inclusivity and diversity push that was very clearly present. They really nailed, not even just as a topic, like that there was actually that happening with the people presenting and that they had it as a topic. I didn't watch this one. I just watched it actually today because it was at the same time as something else that I was doing when it was happening. But there was a session on intentional spaces and intersectionality with a woman named Janet Mock, who is a Black trans woman. There was no other time that there's going to be in like a marketing, this kind of events where the topic is a Black trans woman coming on talking about intersection. I think, not everybody's going to share this opinion, but I think that's fucking amazing. Like that for sure is like a first across any of these things, any kind of like that's really like they nailed let's actually walk that walk and not just like talk about it and like have it like here's one panel and then here's another sea of, I'm going to say this and it'll be hilarious on this show, of white guy marketers talking about, it's just like, hey, it gets, so, we all know it's close to my heart. How the last podcast episode was about that we had here. But I think that HubSpot nailed that. And I think it will, and I certainly hope it will continue that way into the future, even if it's like less of a supercharged situation next year. And, because we're in a charge time where everyone's trying to do something like that. But I hope that sustains and like that becomes a mix. I hope that.
And we hear the words new normal all the time about all of these sort of negative things that are happening, where we're not able to, where we have to wear masks and we're not able to, go to sporting events and things like that. Let's take that new normal and put it to something that's actually good, right?
Yeah.
Having that, right? Like, can that be the new normal, right?
Yeah.
That it's not just people that look like you and I everywhere and getting these opportunities to speak places. I'm sure that we can do a better job as well, right? And it's refreshing to see a company like HubSpot not only say it but really do it, like put their money where their mouth is, and invite these people. I don't want this to be like a Kool-Aid, a HubSpot Kool-Aid episode. But genuinely, I do. Like them as a company. That's not why I bought them, right? Like, I do believe that, it may be partially why I've stayed with them, and it's, kept me with them. But there's a number of other companies that do exactly what HubSpot does, right?
Yep.
Probably just as well. I don't know if Marketo is still the biggest marketing automation platform in the world, but I would imagine that HubSpot's at least getting close. People, you could email me right now, giving me 100% off of Marketo, and I would be like, I don't know. It's gonna be a big lift to change everything.
Yeah.
But then also I don't know. HubSpot's doing all this stuff really, really well. Why would I leave?
Why would you change and risk? Like, what if this doesn't work? Yeah, no, I agree. I think they nailed the representation. They nailed the walking the walk. And I think wrapping back to one of your original points with that new normal thing. So if the big takeaway here is like, okay, here's like the best version so far, I think that at least you and I have experienced as far as creating the virtual conference and doing that. Like, what if that's so if two more good new normals come? One is there's actual diversity and inclusion. And again, to a radical, like you can't find, and Janet said in her presentation, she's like, if you did an oppression hierarchy, right, Black trans women would be at the bottom, you'd never see that. So if you can nail that level and you continue to take this tech, and then even if you're doing like live events, like you said, if the new normal is building this kind of thing around it, then those are two things that we can be excited about. In a world of rapid change, those are two aspects of a new normal that would be great. And
I'm going to sound like a HubSpot cheerleader again. Last year at Inbound, I definitely remember hearing Dharmesh talk about this. He's their CTO, for anybody who doesn't know, co-founder as well. I mean, he literally, his keynote was talking about diversity, and both for, really, it's a good thing for everybody, right? But also just to have that diversity, like the diverse ideas that come from different diverse experiences.
Yeah.
Like, I all too often, and growing up, white guy, suburbs, Canisius High School, which, some of our viewers might not know what that is, but it's, expensive private school, right? You hear this, well, that's not fair to everybody else, like affirmative action, this and that and the other thing. Not fair just to hire somebody, a Black person or a brown person or a woman or a gay, whatever. It's not fair that, that's going to take away from me. And it's like, well, no, we're not trying to take away from you, bud, right?
Yeah.
You cool it. But also, like, if you're a company filled with mini-me's, where are you going to get, right? Like how many new ideas are you going to come up with?
Yeah,
if you're all just like agreeing, standing around agreeing and saying, that's how you get these telephone companies that like think they have the best thing in the world, and they charge you, an arm and a leg for it, and they don't see this cell technology coming to kill it, right? You get these, whatever. The thing for me is that diversity of experiences, that diverse experiences create diverse ideas, and that creates innovation, right?
Right.
I think that is just so incredibly powerful. In my day-to-day, I hate when I come up with an idea and like you or Dan or whoever, it's like, oh, that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because I'm like, oh, shit, is it?
Is it?
I don't know. Like, I'm not sure, right? Like, I think I said it to you guys a couple of weeks ago. Great minds think alike, right? Great minds think alike, but fools seldom differ. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a second part to that rhyme, or whatever you want to call it, and it's true, right? Like, it's like if we all just sit around and agree, we're never going to grow.
Yep.
And that's like, isn't that what you're trying to do with your company? Is grow your company?
I hope so. Yeah, that's no, great point. And I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it on that point since we got the phrase in. And and we both got some other things to do anyway. So, well, thanks for coming all the way in, Matt, and showing up today. Yeah, it was. The commute's rough. The commute's rough for this podcast. Exactly. Yeah, so hopefully this was valuable, and then we'll do another one next year, and we'll see. Maybe that's from a different location. We'll see how it goes.
I think we should also do, and here's me coming up with an idea that I haven't vetted to anybody, but maybe we do another one that's a little bit more new things in HubSpot, right? Because I know that a lot of people that we send this out to end up being HubSpot users.
Yeah, well, it sounds valuable, and I think that's what we're supposed to be doing with this. So, yay, let's provide value. Cool. Well, thanks, bud. I will see you very shortly when you come out of your office, and we'll see you soon, and thanks for watching. Peace out.
Later.